Hey guys, this is Wednesday's video. So today we're going to talk about introductions mostly, as you can see on the syllabus. I'll talk to you briefly about your discussion 13 first. Then I'm going to show you a tool that some of you are already using in discussion 12. And then we'll jump into 4 good samples of introductions. So that will help you with your introduction. As always, please keep sending me questions if you have any about the discussion section. That is probably the hardest to write, and it will take you the most time because it is the most paper-like part of the qualitative research paper. So just keep asking yourself, like, why does this information matter? How does it connect to other information? What does it tell me about the consensus? Does it answer my research question? Does it surprise me? All of these questions can kind of help you generate material for your discussion section as you're going through your findings as well. One thing, just to reiterate, make sure that you are watching the videos and you are treating your classmates with respect. I've gotten a lot of emails saying that people, there were only 8 or 9 people who took their surveys, and that means 4 or 5 people did not take the surveys. This is quite unacceptable. So if you are one of those 4 or 5 who got the data from your peers and did not contribute, then all I can say is shame on you and don't do it again, because it is an anonymous system. So a lot of your peers have emailed me saying that they were, quote, disappointed in the class responses, especially because they took the time to do their homework. So again, just you got away with it. I can't do anything about it, but I'm disappointed as well in those anonymous 4 or 5. So we have to put that behind us now. And what you should be doing is just coding the data. So you don't need to send me an email explaining who or how many people took your survey. Just go ahead and jump in, code the data, because like Monday's video explained and like you guys turned in, discussion 12 was your first finding. Okay, for discussion 13, the peer editing is you should post a draft of your findings and discussion section. So let's jump to that real quick. Oh, also before that, I mentioned in Monday's email, this is an optional midterm evaluation. What's working well for you in the course? What are some activities, things you would like to change? I would love for your constructive feedback if you have a second to do it. The reason why I'm not requiring it is because I'm not grading you on evaluating the course. So if you have a moment and you care about contributing to the betterment of English Online 102, then go ahead and write some notes. Positive feedback is always great for me to hear. Also constructive feedback, so something useful for the future. So discussion 13 is here, peer editing number 3, posting your work. It's the exact same format. You guys have actually been knocking it out of the park with these peer editing responses. You've been very respectful to your peers, and I appreciate that, and I'm sure they do as well. So by 6 p.m. tonight, go ahead and attach and upload a draft of your findings and your discussion sections. So your ultimate paper that's due on Friday at 11:59 p.m. should have 4 to 5 findings and discussions. But this peer editing should just have 2 to 3, as I've mentioned before. So again, we're building onto your findings and discussion sections, excuse me. For discussion 14, that's whenever you respond to your peers. So same system, nothing's new, etc. And then on Friday, as you can see on the syllabus, you have to complete page 79 in JAC. This is more citation material and just giving you a little bit more practice. I'll post the answers for that after you guys have submitted everything so you can check your work against the answers. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more trick before we jump into the 4 samples I have here of really solid introductions for the qualitative research paper. Some of you are already trying to do this trick. You're not doing it super well, so that's why I'm just blunt and honest. That's why I'm going to show you this tool. So if you have your data here, which I am asking you to do a little bit of manual labor so that you have practice with this, as well as not all the types of questions that you ask can generate data, so especially something like this where it has a comment box. So if you have something like this where you have all of the bar graphs, you don't really need to include something this irrelevant, essentially, unless it's extra surprising or it's something that you really are going to unpack in your discussion section. So I actually used in my paper this finding, but I only used the first 3 to talk about the prevalence of solitary confinement images in movies, TV shows, and fiction books. So everything after that, because it was a lower number, was not as important to my research, therefore I didn't include everything. So it's up to you to discern what is important, what isn't important, and then your discussion section is one place where you can talk about that more. So some of you, for example, with something like this, where it's relatively short, it's a yes or no, other, please specify. So again, if you only have like 2 options here, this has 3, I understand, but if you only have 2, if this is like 89% and this was your other percentage, don't put this in your as a visual representation. This would be considered a yes, no, even if it's just 2 options. So I meant to clarify that earlier, but if you have just 2 options, don't represent that data visually. Just put a bullet point and say, 50% did this and 50% said this, so that you don't waste space in your paper. Okay, but something like this, you might want to not include the other, you might want to include the other, I'm not sure, but the percentages are also important to include here. So I know that this is a little bit above 40% based on just the visual nature of the finding. This here, just by going off of it, I know it's a little above 10, and this I'm assuming is 5 roughly. So this would be an okay finding to take an actual snipping tool toward in order to collect this finding. So how you would do that on a PC is you type in snipping tool just as I did here, and then you click new. You want to make sure you have align this with the extremities or the corners, and then you will basically, it will snip it for you. So this looks a little bit more professional than taking a screenshot or including extemporaneous information down here. So then you would save it. And normally when I'm working on a paper and I'm really entrenched in it, I just save everything on my desktop. So I would just save it as like figure 1 or whatever, and then I would go from there. Another way you can do it is, of course, manually. And I have shown you a couple of ways to create charts and tables, graphs, etc., using specifically comment data through an Excel spreadsheet. And a lot of you have really done a great job with that in your discussion 12, and I've commented on discussion 12, so you can go back and look at your feedback for that. So you can alter it and include it in tonight's discussion. Okay, so that's a quick rundown, or not so quick rundown, of a couple of things. So introductions, I'm going to show you as many as I can to get through, which are really superior examples of introductions. Let's start with this one here. So even if the entire paper itself is not super great, like the student didn't do exceptionally well on this first draft of the paper, his introduction stood out to me, so I wanted to pull it out as a good example here. Okay, so here, this was too informal, limit second person use, etc. So don't approach it like a narrative paper or like an op-ed, which is the next paper that you'll write, and the last paper, thank God. I know you're thinking. Don't include second person you. This is not good for scientific writing and also for academic writing. This wouldn't be really seen in a journal article, so which all affects your ethos, right? It goes back to your credibility. So the thing that really impressed me about this introduction was everything that it starts here and it goes down to the end. So you'll see it's multiple paragraphs. I'm only asking for 2 with your guys' study. If you include more, excellent, but the bare minimum is 2, and anything less than that is not meeting the minimum standards for the introduction. So I gave just a little bit of in-text and comments on the side. In one study, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, a researcher, for where, so this would be where the student needs to include a little bit more information about source integration. But the study itself is clear. Studied 22 males between the ages of 14 and 17. He studied parts of the brain, blah, blah, blah. So he gives his citation here. Again, if it has page numbers, go ahead and put the page number like this, and that would be a correct citation. Don't put P, period, don't put a comma, don't put anything like that. Just simply the number. And so he provided background research here. Again, you have to have 4 of your 5 annotated bib sources, and they can be other sources outside of your annotated bib. If you found something later, that's completely fine, but they should be included in here. So he has 2 sources already taken care of by providing some background information or background knowledge toward his understanding of what exists in the field so far. A lot of this is not necessarily in your proposal, but you've already thought about it from your proposal. So you can kind of transfer over those thoughts into your introduction section, as I mentioned previously. So one thing here, again, excellent use of the research, those period rules, just small things like that, keep track of for the final portfolio when you're polishing everything. Anyway, and then he dipped into his study. So very much like the proposal, as I just mentioned, you have background information here, which identifies the gap in the research. And then you have information here about how you arrived at your topic. Basically, I want you to take me through the steps of my first, I thought about this topic in terms of X, and then it evolved to Y. Now my study will use questions from the survey, etc., to understand. This here would be better served in the participant section. He's just repeating himself, so I cut that out. My research is important. This is the kind of so what question, that infamous question I know you guys have probably heard of before. My research is important because it can help fill the gap on understanding how violence can affect an individual. My study is relevant in understanding the personal characteristics of an individual and how this characteristic may change the course of desensitization. So it wasn't really the structure of my research will, my study will. That wasn't really the champion of this introduction. It was his vocabulary. It was his specification of language. Really why his study is important. I can get a sense of that here in the introduction, and then by the end of the discussion section, I'm hoping to get a fuller sense or a broader sense. All right, let's move on to another paper to give you a different example. This student also did a fantastic job, and I believe you have this paper online. He did a fantastic job through the whole class, but specifically in this introduction section. So, he has a tiny introduction here. The survey was conducted to find the cause behind society's obsession with the apocalypse. So he has just a list of his research questions. That's completely fine. Like, you can have a tiny bit of an introduction, and then he jumps into research. A neuroscientist from the University of Minnesota by the name of Shmuel Lissick, I'm assuming, said in an interview with Scientific American's Daisy Uhouse, So not all this information is specifically important, but if I needed it, if I wanted to really test the scientific nature or whatever of this information against my own field, I could, because he provides everything here for us. Everything's very specific in this introduction. And he does a good job of specifying between his own voice and the author's voice. So that's another thing too. Make sure you clarify when the author is talking. So according to so-and-so, that's when these templates would come in handy. So-and-so says, argues, claims. There's a whole list of them. They're called attributive tags, and they're in EasyWriter. They're also, I believe, in a previous video that I brought up earlier. And then he gets into his own research, so he follows the exact same pattern. Thus, conspiracy theories and apocalyptic beliefs allow their peddlers to feel a sense of significance. They had knowledge that others did not, and therefore power. This idea goes hand in hand with the writings of Sharon Newman in The Real History of the End of the World. He has a little bit more research here, and then these theories and surveys inspired me to conduct my own survey and observation to test the implications behind the apocalyptic trend. So all of this is really, I mean, he went ham on the research, and I really appreciated that. He pretty much got all of his research in the very first paragraph. So that's something you can do if you want to save a little bit for your discussion section. That's fine as well. Again, his discussion was not very full and his findings were not great, but his introduction was amazing. So that's it for the introduction video. If you have questions, let me know. If you need more ideas, I can definitely generate a list of questions for you guys. But otherwise, keep up the good work and stick around for tomorrow's video.